All right. Back again Wednesday night. Fun things going on this week. Still nothing from the Bank of Japan, though, which I'm confused about. Just like I'm sure you guys are. We've still got more than 2% inflation there in their economy, and they just continue to hold interest rates. Their prime minister is going to meet with Trump tomorrow here in the U.S., so we'll see how that goes. But for them to continue to hold interest rates, I don't know how they can keep kicking the can like this. I feel like things are going to break with private credit where it's at and everything else. And then we've got all this momentum for digital assets also. Yesterday, we had the CFTC and the SEC issue a joint memorandum or understanding, basically, that the majority of digital assets are not securities, they're commodities. Now, the contracts that people issue on top of these things obviously can be securities, and we're still kind of up in the air a little bit on staking and liquidity pools and some of the other things. They did outline, a framework, but until we have congressional legislation, they're just doing the best they can with what they got. So waiting on the Clarity Act for everything to be kind of codified, but they are moving forward in good faith. From what I understand, the SEC has also approved for the stock market to now be tokenized, which is wild. We know earlier, last year at Swell, we had the president of NASDAQ talking about that. You've had New York Stock Exchange talking about that. And you've even had Paul on a couple different social media networks, large networks like CNN, Fox, and others, where he's been interviewed and he's talked about, the back-end settlement of the stock market, and that they would tokenize the stock market later this year in 2026. So exciting to see that finally moving forward here. And then on top of all of that, you've got Evernorth filing their S4 today to be able to finalize their SPAC. So we're waiting on the SEC to approve the S4 for XRP in to be, actually have the XRP and be able to do things with it, and for that to trade, kind of post money, which is going to be $1 billion XRP or $1 billion in XRP added to the SPAC vehicle that they acquired middle of last year. And it's been a long time. It's unusual that a SPAC would take this long for them to finalize it, but we are here at the finish line for that. So, and that's what they said. They said that they would finalize that sometime in Q1, and we were right here in the last couple weeks. So timing is everything. This guy never misses. I just listen to people that are smarter than me, and here we are. Things tend to follow through. It's not that I haven't ever missed. I definitely missed at the end of last year. I don't think I'm going to be that far off on it. If I'm 3-6 months off on a prediction, I think people could give me some grace on that. At least I hope they would. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the super chats. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. And if you wouldn't mind, please hit that like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff that helps the algorithm. If you are finding value. If you're not finding value, don't do those things. All right, we'll jump into the first one here from Carbon One. Robert, good to see you, dude. He says LLC and Carbon One next. The LLC is next, and then to DWP. I'm 70 in crypto for 5+ years, following you for 2 years. You've made a real difference in my life. XRP reality audit filled some gaps for me. Thoughts on the Bank of Japan decision? Thank you for the kind words, brother. I don't know if we got to see you at the event last night out there in Nashville, but that was a lot of fun. We had I don't think we had all 700 people. A lot of the flights were delayed. I know Ray Fuentes, love you mucho, Ray, didn't get in until, after the event was over, unfortunately. But we did get some good interviews and some other things that I'm sure will be shared here in the near future. But yeah, somewhere between 400 and 500 people there in Nashville last night, getting to know one another, meeting and mingling. What I love about those events is people get to come together community wise, and you really don't know how many other cool XRP people there are around you until you go to one of these. And then, everybody's within 20, 30, 45 an hour, minutes to an hour from the venue. And then you have other cool buddies that don't look at you like you have a third eye when you want to talk about this stuff. So it was really cool. Got to shake a lot of hands, meet a lot of people that, you meet people online, and it's kind of cool. It is what it is. But meeting people in person, shaking their hand, looking them in the eye, I really prefer that. So we'll continue to put on the events. We do more in real life events than anybody else in the crypto space, maybe besides Crypto Mondays. Shout out to Lou over there at Crypto Mondays. But if you want to find some people in your neck of the woods, you can join the mastermind. We would love to have you. All you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. And that gets you access to all of the events that we put on. So love to see you there. Back to the question at hand, though. Again, thank you for the kind words and following along, and very humbled to hear that this has been valuable for you. As far as the Bank of Japan decision goes, kind of like what I said when I first got on here, I don't understand. The inflation in their economy is higher than 2% at this point. So for them to be able to hold rates, we have the prime minister coming over here to talk to Trump tomorrow, and maybe something will come of that. But they have made XRP a financial instrument, or financial instrument there in Japan. You've got Evernorth launching. You've got many other things kind of compounding here at the end of March. We'll just have to see how things play out. Astrological New Year in just a few days for the spring equinox. So that'll be fun. Lots of cool, I don't talk about the astrology stuff on here very often, but lots of interesting things taking place there. And I don't know how much further they can kick the can here. I feel like there's too much inflation in their economy, and then the Fed's up against the wall with the private credit markets here in the U.S. There were some payment issues there in Japan that I heard about today also. So could that be, the first inkling of ICE 9? Maybe. Not sure. There's not enough to say yet, but all of the symptoms are there for this to move very quickly. And when it does, I think that the Bank of Japan will have to act when that happens. And it would be unprecedented. They've never had an emergency meeting like that to raise interest rates. But there's a first time for everything, So we got Q Griffin. They say, Jake, retail's champion, Carbon One Mastermind. After price appreciation, closer to largest East Coast hemp facility. 250K uses, premium antimicrobial bedding. Would love to support your wife's horses. Appreciate you. Bluey got me in the eye. Look, there's a lot of uses for hemp. So if you really want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole on the hemp deal, marijuana was put out in the papers in the early 1900s as something that would cause you to rape people and do horrible stuff, and it was propagated with that narrative, and that's what helped get it made it illegal. But the real, I think people behind that narrative were people that had the cotton gins and paper, because hemp, the Constitution's actually written on hemp. And that's why it's lasted so long. But as far as clothes, and there's a ton of things that hemp can be used for. Bedding, like you mentioned here, antimicrobial. There's a lot of applications where it's actually more suitable than what we use today. But because it's not produced at scale, and the weed leaf is illegal here in the U.S. It continues to be. You haven't seen the proliferation of that. So there's always incumbents and people that have the money that can lobby and do certain things and push a certain narrative. You've seen that, against digital assets and some of the other things that are out there that would probably be more beneficial for society. But because there are people, profiting off of other things, they don't want those things to disintermediate them, and they will do whatever they can to actually keep that from happening. So shout out to you. Very cool that you're working on that. And I think that is likely going to take hold. It's probably going to take the government legalizing marijuana federally in order for, the actual application and use of hemp across the U.S. and in all those different reasons or all those different ways to actually, have the pass that it needs. But I think being proactive on that, being in place, is probably a good spot to be. So good on you. And yeah, would love to figure something out with the horses for sure. Wife has horse blankets when it gets cold. Keeps the rain off, keeps the wind off of them, keeps them a little bit warmer. Joseph, he says, do you think the timing of classifying XRP as a commodity before clarity was purposeful? Are the powers working together to move things along? I think so. I've told you guys that we don't need the Clarity Act. XRP in and of itself is not a security, and now it's designated a commodity. They can go ahead and start using it as far as I'm concerned. And I think they will. It has to just has to be enough liquidity in it for them to do that. Wayne, good to see you, dude. He says, good to see you guys in Nashville yesterday. Looking forward to the Vegas meetup. It would be cool to have a short seminar with special visitor in future meetups. We've looked at doing a lot of different things over the years. The PA system was actually good there in Nashville. So, we were able to get up there and introduce Canary Capital and Mangrove and just thank them for co-sponsoring with us. Really enjoyed that. Some people wanted a Q&A. And what I'll say about that is you get the Q&A right here, right? Like Mondays and Wednesdays. And if you're in the mastermind, even more than that, answer questions all the time. So I don't know that that's the best forum for even more of that. I know people probably wouldn't mind based on the feedback that we've gotten, but special visitor or guests like that, I think that that's something that we could probably accommodate. We have an event coming up where we're going to have Dr. Fader come speak. He is a sports psychologist. He's going to talk about next gen planning and how to empower your children and keep from, putting them in a position where they become a trust fund kid or they feel like they have to live in your shadow, which I think will be really cool for people to hear. And we'll continue to put stuff together like that. I've been part of other dinners that we've been hosting. These have been private dinners for family offices, kind of separate of the mastermind. But we're part of Headliner series. We had Chris Voss at a dinner last year with his wife, Wendy, which was great to see them and listen to Chris talk about the art of negotiation. But yeah, if we can, people are a little pricey. There's nothing wrong with that. They charge for their time if they're going to come do a keynote or speak. But we can definitely look at getting some special guests to the meetups and maybe give them some stage time if that's something people would be interested in. John Bo Green, he says, hey, legend, what's up, dude? Exciting times, quick price appreciation. I remember a year ago, you mentioned once synthetics, SNX, still possible they share in the back end of derivatives. Thanks for everything and the mods. I haven't looked at that in a long time, to be honest with you. It's possible. There was some speculation on that back in the day. If they do get adoption in that capacity, maybe they'll be around. It's not a token that I am overly concerned with. Again, I haven't looked at it since that conversation. But I will circle back on it now that you've mentioned it again, and appreciate you bringing it up and being part of the group. We got 19 trades. They say you look more like Alan Richson than Blake. Okay, I'll take that. I mean, either one of those guys, Blake Griffin or Allen, I will take it. Other people, so when the Twilight movie came out, and I don't look as much like this now because I have the beard. Um, but Jacob Black, I woke up to like 8 or 9 text messages the next morning. Um, if you all saw a picture of me when I was younger, it's a lot more comparable than it is now. But I'll take Blake Griffin and Allen. Appreciate that. We got Brent. He says, "Hey Jake, rate increase only thing that will trigger the reverse carry trade, or anything else? God bless." You could have some other stuff. So the Fed could lower interest rates aggressively. Jake Griffin, I like Peter Griffin. Family Guy. So it could go the other way. The Fed could lower interest rates, and if they did that aggressively enough that it dropped the yield on the treasuries, people might find it more advantageous to hold Japanese bonds and then rotate out of U.S. treasuries into Japanese bonds. We should see. I think we have the FOMC meeting next week. Let me take a look here. FOMC meeting next week. It says it was today. What did they say? That's February 18th. Press conference PDF. Doesn't say that they raised interest rates. So theirs was also today. I didn't see what the Fed did. They probably held though, right? Like again, if they lower aggressively more than 25, 50 basis points, you're going to see the reverse carry trade unwind. If Japan raises something similar, you would see the reverse carry trade unwind. So they're stuck in between a rock and a hard place, and now you're starting to see credit dry up here in the U.S. and banks are tightening lending. There's going to come a point where this stuff breaks, and if there's not something to provide liquidity in that situation, says the Fed held today, Japan tomorrow. Okay, well there you go. So it was the Fed that held today, was not Japan. Japan should be coming on any time now, maybe even while we're on here. The Duke, he says, "Mr. Legend, I appreciate all that you do, Beyond Rope Mastermind. I have read several articles regarding Ripple using RLUSD. The XRP is solely to fund Ripple." Yeah. People don't really know what they're talking about. I understand that they use it to fund growth. Is there a chance they'll only use RLUSD? So no, it's a positive feedback loop. They need both. So this is not a good example, but I'll give you an example of another ecosystem that required a dynamic token and a stable coin. And that would be Luna and UST. So Luna was, the token that the value increased on and could fluctuate, whereas they had UST, which was just a stable coin issued at the same dollar valuation as just a regular dollar. You need both of those things in order for liquidity to continue to move into an ecosystem. People want something stable that they can hold value in, but they also want appreciation on a token, and there needs to be something to settle between RLUSD and other things, because not everybody's going to want RLUSD. The banks are not going to continue to fund Ripple at scale. Institutions might, and some of the enterprises that they work with are probably going to be okay with holding RLUSD and paying Ripple, and Ripple will buy more treasuries and issue them RLUSD. But other banks are going to want the yield off of the treasuries. They're not going to want to hold Ripple's stablecoin. So you need something that allows for interoperability between RLUSD and whatever stablecoins that the banks are going to issue. And that's where you need an intermediary DEX, and that's what the XRPL provides. RLUSD is also Ripple controls it. Okay, so let's say they wanted to freeze it, or they wanted to claw it back. they can do those things because it is an issued asset on the XRPL. XRP itself cannot be done to XRP. Cannot be frozen, cannot be clawed back. So as far as sovereign countries and other people that would prefer that somebody can't control what they have, XRP is really the only thing out there like that. Even on, proof of work networks, the miners could collude and change the order of which the transactions took place. Proof of stake, the people that are managing the larger staking pools could decide to reorder transactions or do different things or roll back the blockchain. On the XRPL, you can't do that, and XRP can't be manipulated. So I think that there's a lot of reasons that institutions and other players that maybe that even partner with Ripple would prefer to use XRP over RLUSD in transactions. The Mofo 1000 says, hey Jay, you mentioned on the previous YouTube that an IUL insurance for someone who just retired is kind of a crappy deal. Can you explain and suggest what would be a better option? Yeah. So look, the person that cut that policy made a lot of money. I can tell you that because there was a period of time when I looked at doing it, I was like, this is a scam and I'm screwing people over. So you need to be able to pay your premiums every single month. If you have a variable rate policy that allows you to participate in more upside in the market, which is often how they will present it to you. They say, oh, you get more upside if you choose this one, but you're still limited on the downside, so don't worry. Well, let's say the market goes through a bad period, which is quite possible. It's not always up and to the right. Maybe for a couple of years, the insurance companies lose money in the market. Guess what they can do to your rate on an IUL? They can jack it up if it's a variable rate policy. And if you can't make the premiums, you can't make the monthly payments or the quarterly payments, however you have it structured, guess where they take that money from? They take it out of your principal, your retirement, which they told you couldn't go down, but they're going to take it from you because you can't cover the premiums. So that's the situation that I don't want people to end up in if that they're at the end of their life. If you have a long time horizon, over a 15 to 30 year time horizon before you're going to be using the policy, that's why I like it for kiddos. It's likely that the market's going to do well over that period. That's a long duration of time. You should receive results in that period, and you should get the compounding you're looking for. But in retirement, you're looking for steady income. You might look at an annuity if you wanted to use a different type of insurance product. That would probably be better suited for somebody that's in retirement than an IUL. Might also look at, dividend paying stocks or something else that could produce you at least quarterly income or monthly income to be able to continue to service your lifestyle and pay for things and have a regular cadence and I don't want to say guaranteed income, but pretty regular income that you can count on, right? Like all those things are good toward the end of your life. And if you have some additional, cool, maybe you roll that on something a little more speculative like an IUL. But insurance should be the safe thing. It should not be, how you should have already made your money and then you put it into insurance to be able to preserve that wealth and grow it, over the long term at a fairly low risk rate. IULs for people in their retirement after they're rolling their 401k into it. The only reason you would do that if you suggest it to somebody is because you're making a bunch of money on it. It's almost never in the interest of the person. Now, are there like certain niche cases that might be a bit benefit, and if the policy is structured a specific way, maybe. But for me, when I saw people doing that, I felt super put off. It seemed super skeezy and slimy to me. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. I'm not the end all be all. There are people that, like if you want to talk to Carl over there at Exure Legacy, just go to exurelegacy.com. check that out. They will assess your policy for you. They'll tell you if it was cut in the benefit of the person that made it for you, or if it was actually made for you, free of charge. They just look at what you currently have for policies, no questions asked. You can schedule a time. Their calendars are pretty open over there. XURElegacy.com is the website. And again, they'll do a full assessment on any policies that you have. So, like I said, I got one for my son. I think that makes sense because it's a long time horizon. It'll have a high cash value. There is a floor on it, but I did a fixed rate, not a variable rate. So, if the market goes 20% up in 1 year, I don't capture all that upside, but it's also not going to be, moving my rate around. If the market goes through a couple bad years, the insurance companies aren't going to be able to jack that up on me. Moon Phoenix XRP. They say, hey, Jake, I recently opened an LLC and trust. Awesome. Had an amazing initial meeting with Ryan. Glad to hear that. One of the financial advisors. Now keep waiting for Moon. Well, I'm glad to be working with you. And I'm sure our team is too. Ryan does an awesome job over there on the wealth management side. And sounds like you're right in position. I'm proud of people like you that are proactive and not proud of, proud for. I'm proud for you that you're being proactive and structuring things and making sure you're in position to take full advantage of this on the other side of price appreciation. A lot of people I think are going to be caught off guard and rushing around last minute and kind of caught with their pants down. I think this is going to move much more aggressively than a lot of people anticipate. And those that are pre-positioned and have done the work, they're going to be, able to capitalize on it much easier than those that have not. So kudos to you. We've got Textured Puma. Good to see you. They say, hey, Jake, can you play devil's advocate? Why would Ripple fight so hard for clarity if they didn't care about XRP? They've already gotten Genius, and they don't seem to care about stablecoin rewards. If I were Ripple, I would want to seem for the industry and just and taking the high road and all those things. But the reality of the situation is everybody else poo-pooed on Ripple when the lawsuit happened. There were people that said, good morning to everybody except for people that sold unregistered securities. Like there's just a ton of stuff over the past 5 years where the rest of people in crypto, excuse my French, but shat on people that owned XRP. And I think it just shows their character for them to continue to advocate for the space and continue to fight for other people, even though they didn't fight for them when the time was there for them to do so. And those are the type of people I would want in that position, right? But at the same time, they can look like they're advocating for it and not get passed and nothing changes for them. XRP is already across the line. And that's what, Hoskinson's upset about. He said, they formed the ladder and then pulled the ladder up behind them. That's not what they're doing. They are literally trying to get something in place so that the industry can move forward. And they've spent, $300 million fighting the SEC to get XRP into a position where it kind of leapfrogged everything else. They could have sued. I mean, they sued other people too. It wasn't just XRP that the SEC went after. So anyway, I would say they definitely do care about XRP, and it already has clarity, but they want the rest of the space to win. They want competition. They want things, a level playing field. I think that's all they've ever wanted. And now that they're on the other side of it, they're trying to make that happen, but I don't know that it will. We may not see the Clarity Act passed. They're hoping by Easter. Maybe we'll have a party by Easter. not going to read this name. He says, "What's up, big dog? Is it a good thing that they are all commodities? Weren't we kind of hoping most of them were securities?" I got in here a little late. Hope you didn't answer this already. No, I didn't. I think it's a good thing. You want these protocols to be able to operate and be used. And if every single one of them is a security, or there has to meet some like decentralization metric in order for it to move from a security to a commodity, it encumbers the whole space and makes it where it's very difficult for anybody to put out new technology and to innovate. So if they're designated commodities, the assets themselves that move value or data on the network, then that makes a lot of sense. And then separate of that, if you raise money with those tokens, that would be a securities offering. If you structure a SAFT or a simple agreement for future tokens, or if you gave out token warrants or other things. And they've been doing that for a long time here in the US, alongside an equity offering for a corporation. Met a guy last night at the deal, there he's from Knoxville, and he runs a hedge fund. He's been in crypto since 2012, and he does a lot of early stage venture for ICOs and token warrants and that type of stuff. So, I'm excited about the way that they put the regulation forward. I think it makes a lot of sense. XRP, again, kind of leading the way there, is not a security, but now we know it's a commodity, and many of the other ones are going to be a commodity as well. So yeah, I think that it's good to have like full clarity on it, what it is and what it isn't. Kurt, good to see you, dude. He says, how about the XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR algo are all labeled digital commodities after the SEC and the CFTC came together? The Megazord slugging percentage is like Barry Bonds in the steroid era. Thanks for all that you do. Happy New Year's and April Fools. Happy New Year, Kurt. We got a couple more days here for the astrological New Year, and then you got Japan's financial New Year on April 1st as well. Annie, Miss Black, she says, good evening. After the Bank of Japan rate hike, what next 2 to 3 things to be watching for the unwind to ensue? Carbon One DBP client, thank you for all your service. Thank you. Glad to be working with you. Thank you for being part of the community. So you're going to see a rotation out of U.S. Treasuries. You'll see a destabilization in the bond market. Michael Guyad's brilliant economist. He believes that everybody's going to rotate into U.S. Treasuries. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the only thing that's going to stabilize U.S. Treasuries is going to be the Genius Act. You just saw PayPal roll their stablecoin out. I think that you're going to see other large banks and institutions start to roll their stablecoins out to be able to drive demand for treasuries on the market as they flow back from foreign debt holders. So that's one thing, rotating out of U.S. Treasuries into Japanese bonds, destabilization of that market. You likely would see a huge move down in the Nikkei. You would also likely see large moves down across other markets, including the stock market here in the U.S. and other jurisdictions. One thing I will say that was interesting was the Bank of Australia did raise interest rates 25 basis points. So also looking at Europe, I think Europe's about to be in some big trouble. The energy costs there in Europe are starting to skyrocket pretty significantly. We saw oil up over 110 today here in the US. Natural gas hasn't jumped as much as I thought it would, but it's definitely coming. And in Europe, natural gas and the energy costs there, since they're not getting it from Russia and they're not going to change the sanctions, it's going to become much more expensive. So you're also going to see things start to break in their economy. And it will move quickly. As soon as we start to see the credit crisis happen, where things start to lock up, you'll hear about it a little bit on Twitter, most likely, and then you'll start to see things that are actually happening in our economy here in the U.S. So, those are the next kind of 2 or 3 things that I'd be watching for. And the FX market, there's going to be a huge trade volume between, people liquidating positions in other markets, reselling, selling those back into dollars or euros, and then rushing to pay back their loans in yen. Volatility in the FX market. And that's what Japan's already talked about. And they are planning to step in to mitigate volatility in the FX market when that ensues. Rockin' HL says, I read a post saying Japan may slow roll this so citizens ease into a CBDC. Also, Loomis said, get clarity through by the end of April. Can this thing hang on that long? Always learning. Thank you. And the mastermind. Glad to have you in the group. Again, if you guys want to join the group, we would love to have you. You can go to the mastermind events and you get to listen to the town halls and all the other fun stuff we have there. You just go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, you the first month for $2. So when it comes to the Clarity Act, again, I don't know that they even get it across the line. If they do get it across the line, I think it's going to be a skinny version. I think they're going to strip out the DeFi piece of it. I think if there's going to be 2 more pieces of legislation, the Clarity Act and then something else that they will end up passing. 3 in total, the Genius Act, Clarity Act, and then don't know what the third one's going to be named, but something to do with DeFi is my guess. I'm hopeful that they get it passed soon. We got the SAVE Act on the floor. The Republicans have said if they aren't able to pass the SAVE Act, they're not passing anything else. And midterms are not too far. People are going to start campaigning for that. Their attention's going to be pulled there. So if they don't get it done here in March or April, I don't know that it's likely it's going to get done this year in 2026. I'm hopeful for it, but again, in my mind, it doesn't really matter. XRP doesn't need it; it already has it. So just needs some liquidity in it to start being used. One crypto world. One. Have you ever talked about how Ripple is the only crypto company that is a member of ISDA? I have not talked about that, but that's a really good point that you're bringing up. For those that don't know, ISDA is a big deal. So, take some time, go Google that. And I think you'll come to find just another reason that this is all going to be very successful. AMF Enterprises says, what's up, Jake? Seems like Trump wants everything in place before he allows reverse carry trade. They seem to be milking the Evernorth. Zena says June in one of her posts. Do you see, do she know or guessing? She works for Ripple. So, June is middle of the year. XRP's 14th birthday will be this year on June 2nd. As far as putting everything in place before the reverse carry trade, I think that they're going to need to figure out what they're going to do on stablecoin yield, because without that piece, the banks aren't going to move and really push their stablecoin narrative and drive demand for U.S. Treasuries. So I think they're probably going to stick with what the banks want. I know that that's not what people want to hear, but they need the banks to buy up all those treasuries when they flow into the market issuing their stablecoins. And if they're unhappy about the yield and how that's structured, they might not be willing to do that. So we'll see, how that ends up shaking out. But that's one of the things I'm looking at for everything to be in place for the reverse carry trade to unwind. If they can't immediately start issuing stable coins for the banks to be able to drive demand for that, that's going to be a disaster in our bond market and for the dollar and for us. This person, good to see you. They say, hey, Jake, great mastermind meetup last night. Awesome. Got to meet a lot of amazing people. Hopefully next time, get to shake your hand, say hi to the tea lady. Yeah, we had the tea lady there. And then I was in the back room, taking photos and shaking hands and answering questions and doing all the fun stuff that we always do at the events. So sorry I didn't get to catch you, but to your point, hopefully I get to see you at the next one. And again, appreciate you taking time out and making it to that one. We got Come On Japan. Do you think? That's an awesome name. They say, thank you for sharing your insights with us. Excited to work with your company soon. Me too, man. Thank you for the kind words, and also very excited to work with y'all in the near future. Truth of Hearts, Casey, baby. She says, it's Thursday. What you rolling out that you mentioned? Also, maybe Japan is waiting for Mercury retrograde to end, and I told you, get rid of Bluey. There's nothing wrong with Bluey. I'm fine with Bluey. So you guys will see a press release tomorrow. Excited about what you guys are going to get to read, and we'll continue to roll those as things progress here. But that one's been in the works for a while, and glad that collaboration is going to be public and we can talk about it. Bach Orwin says, hey Jake, Carbon One here. Hear me out. What if Trump has U.S. government stocked with XRP and they sell it off, or a chunk of it, for the national debt? What are the potential fallout repercussions of that? Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. So in basic accounting, you have assets and liabilities. Okay, you have debits and credits. Right now, we have way more liabilities than we have assets on the U.S. balance sheet. And we get revenue from taxes each year, and it's a certain percentage of GDP. We're able to service the debt with that income off of the taxes. If you get more than 133 to 160% over leveraged on your GDP to debt ratio, that's where things get wonky, and you really can't start servicing. You can no longer effectively service your debt. So you have to devalue the debt. You continue to print more money. In the past, the way that they've offset that is they've revalued assets on the U.S. balance sheet in order to be able to back the currency. So if you look back to 1933, when they took everybody's gold for $20 and they revalued it to $35 on the U.S. balance sheet, and eventually up to $42, which is where it sits, 42 and change is what it sits on the Fed's balance sheet at today. That's what they're going to do with the XRP. They don't need to sell it to pay off the debt or satisfy the debt. They just need it to be repriced on their balance sheet to be able to offset the assets versus the liabilities. So again, like for you as a person, yes, that makes sense. But as a business or a sovereign institution or a government, you look at your debt to equity or your, assets to liabilities, and that's how you become solvent again, versus having to actually sell it off to pay the debt. We got David, Mr. Whited. He says, appreciate you and how you represent family. Thank you, man. What is the current real-time impact on Japan running low on oil and moving to their reserves? I hear they have 200 plus days they want to hold tight. They're supposed to roll that out today. Actually, Thursday was the day that they're supposed to start leveraging that there in Japan to be able to help, remove some of the inflation in their economy. I haven't seen an effect yet that's been beneficial. We've still got oil priced in yen at over $15,000. Jeez, it's late, and I did not get enough sleep last night. Over 15,000 yen per barrel there in Japan. So I haven't seen a big move down like you would expect if they had enough supply to put onto the market. There's absolutely still inflation there in their economy. You can look at the chart again, USD versus the yen. I'm looking at TradingView right now. We're currently at 159, 580. Come on, 589, 587. If we continue to poke north here, it ran up a little bit earlier today to 159.8 and it's fallen a little bit. But if we poke our head over 160, that's where things are going to get wonky, and the Bank of Japan is going to have to step in, irrespective of whatever reserves for oil they have. Rippled, XNS, very cool. They say with the two agencies determining XRP is a DIGCOM, as well as a court decision, what would that allow Ripple to keep all the escrow despite the Clarity Act 20% rule? Thank you. By the way, I shared a super chat program to your DM. Well, let me pull up here and see if I got any of my other email. Actually, probably should check the Discord too, because Living Legacy is always nice and looking out for me, and I'll make sure he posts them in here if I miss some of the bigger ones. There he is. All right, let's look here. I've got 2 super chats, so I will get to that one. This question though, I don't think that there's going to be allowed to, even if the Clarity Act passes as it sits, which it may or may not. It would require that Ripple, can't hold more than 20% of the XRP. All right, these are the super chats. No, I did that one last time. And hold on. I think I did this one last time also. So I don't have it, my man. And I apologize for that. If you did send it in, they didn't get it over to me this evening. I will follow up with them and figure out what happened, and I will circle back and get it on the Monday live. Toro, they say, don't we need BlackRock for price appreciation? And didn't they say they wouldn't be offering an XRP ETF until April? Maybe. I asked Steve last night from Canary Capital, and he still says Q4 for potential, bull market here in crypto. I tend to be a little aggressive with my timelines. We know that. So, I'm hopeful that, potentially this quarter or next quarter, we'll start to see some positive movement. But all that being said, Steve says Q4 for BlackRock ETF. If you saw April, though, I would love for that to be accurate. Mark Hayes, he says, hey, Jake, BOJ meeting is a 2-day event. We're expecting the press conference in about an hour, 45 minutes, 2 p.m. Japan time. Thoughts on Japan CBDC in due course as per your domino theory? I think that they're absolutely going to have a CBDC there in Japan. There's a lot of other countries there in Southeast Asia, and including China. China already has a CBDC. They're going to need to be able to supplement people's income. UBI is going to be a thing globally. If don't necessarily have to agree with that. I get that, but it is coming, and I do think that that's absolutely going to play a role if it's issued by their central bank. And the other banks there utilizing XRP to be able to settle between one another. So yeah, it sounds like some fireworks might happen tonight. We'll just have to stay up and watch. I am probably going to cut tonight short, just being honest. I am a little worn out over the last couple days, so I'm going to try to grab a couple more here, but probably cut the super chats now. I'm going to go to the bottom and work my way up, and we'll, give you guys maybe an extra 30 minutes of sleep back tonight. Cody says, my biggest bag is XRP, then HBAR. Then I have ICP, like Insane Clown Posse. Just kidding. Internet Computer. What are your thoughts on ICP? I think it's a competitor to HBAR and a decentralized internet, basically. I like it. I think that it has its place. I think that it'll be around. I don't know if it's ever going to get back to $750 like it was at the peak. It was a crazy valuation for that token. Would love to see it for people that are holding it, though. So, yeah, I could be a great call, but it's not something that's immediately on my radar post price appreciation for XRP. Mr. Affiliated says, Jake, the legend. Ripple can coincidentally has multiple VASP in similar licenses pending outside the US, waiting on regulatory approval and expected for Q2, same as the Clarity Act. Is the story already written? Look, for Evernorth to be launching right now feels coordinated to me, but you know, I'm just some crazy guy on the internet. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. And this is probably a good time for my disclaimer because I didn't give it at the beginning. I need to do it. Anything here, entertainment and educational purposes only. It's not financial advice. If you need financial advice, you should speak with a financial advisor. If you need tax advice, you should speak with a CPA. If you need legal advice, you should speak with an attorney. I am none of those things. I don't hold those credentials. I don't put myself out as such. I come on here and give you guys my opinion about things, and they are my opinions. My opinions are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners, which is our SEC registered RIA. If you need those professionals to be able to make those decisions and you want to reach out to Digital Ascension Group, we employ them. We have partners. We can get you with the right people, and no matter really where you are globally, we have somebody likely in your jurisdiction that we can share with you. There are a few regions that we're, not as equipped in, but for the most part, if you're in a first world country, we have good people. And I am the majority shareholder of all of those companies. So again, take that with a grain of salt. We don't have sponsors on this channel except for Decent. They're the only sponsor that we have. The sponsors are our companies. So that's why we promote them on here and talk about them. And I'm proud of them, and I'm biased. So take it all with a grain of salt, but appreciate you guys that have and do want to work with us. We got Nor to the moon. They say, till when the US and Japan can continue playing chicken and with the interest rates. Greetings from the Netherlands. That's a great question, dude. I don't know how much longer they can keep kicking the can on this and going back and forth and playing chicken, like you said. I think they're real close to the end of their rope, to be honest with you. 68J, good to see you, dude. He says, my brother, the man, the myth, the legend, Jake Claver. Appreciate you, my guy. Respect. Appreciate it, man. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you being with us and listening in. For those that don't know, Jay's putting on an event out there in Vegas. It is, I believe, the Saturday night after XRP Vegas, and he's got a ton of heavy hitters in the room there. So Hugo Filion, almost all the other XRP influencers are going to be there. A lot of other great people as well. So if you hadn't bought your ticket, I think you can use, I think we have a code. I think you can use DAG as our code, or maybe it's DWP10. It's one of those two. It's either DWP10 or DAG. I think it's DWP10 is our code, but you get like 10% off of the ticket if you want to go over there. Just go to his socials, 68J, and check it out. And I'm sure, I bet he's almost sold out, to be honest with you. There's a lot of people going to that event. And like I said, he's got all of the headliners there supporting him. We got Eddie Martinez. He says, bodybuilding legend. Definitely not a bodybuilding legend. I appreciate the sentiment, though. When XRP price appreciation, do you think price will stay up to hold or crash, so sell and reinvest? Depends on how high it goes, to be honest with you. If we don't get to 3 or 4 digits, then we're not going to have enough liquidity in it for them to start using it. And I think that's why it's taken so long for it to go up. I think it's going to go right past double digits. If we go right past double digits and we're 3 to 4 digits, you'll see enough volume start to move through it that it'll hold those prices. It'll be a high stable value. But until it gets there, you're definitely going to see some volatility. So, if we ran to like 25, 50 bucks, probably going to come back down at some point. If it gets over 100 to 1,000, I think it's going to stay there. We've got WizFit 66. They say, hey Jake, Carbon One LLC DWP, awesome. Glad to be working with you. Excited that you're being proactive. How does price appreciation actually happen? I assume it's not someone in a room pressing a $100 button. It's not. Please explain it to me like I'm a third grader. Appreciate all that you do. Okay, so like a third grader, we'll use the Pokemon cards. I actually made a video about this the other day. So humor me for a second and just speculate with me that there's only a 1,000 Charizards in the world, and they're Beckett or what's the other grading agency? You know, they're the highest graded cards. There's only 1,000 of them. There's probably less than that, to be honest with you, but we're gonna use 1,000 for a round number. As those get bought up off the market, the price gets bid up, right? There's supply and demand. The more demand there is, the higher the price people are willing to pay. XRP works the same way. If there's not much available on the exchanges for sale or settlement, and there's a lot of people clamoring for it all at one time, then they're willing to pay higher prices, you'll continue to see the price escalate. And that's what I believe is going to transpire. Order books are very thin over $3 or $4 XRP. There's not a whole lot of bids or asks there. And so people that are holding it believe that it's worth a lot more, and they're not going to be willing to sell it at 10, 20, 25, 50, 75 bucks. They're looking for 100 bucks. They're looking for 500 bucks. They're looking for $1,000. And so for those reasons, when we do see the demand come in, a substantial amount of demand on a very limited amount of supply, you would see the price rise aggressively. And then once it's at those levels, there's enough liquidity in the token that they can actually start using it to settle transactions. And that new volume that moves on the network, settling those transactions, will hold the price at a high stable value. So I don't know if that was third grader enough for you, but we have a video coming out about the liquidity index, which is an equation that I put together that breaks it down, and I tried to make it as simple as humanly possible to understand the different components of the liquidity index and how they all work together. So I'm sure that video will get dropped and you guys will get to see that and you'll be excited about it, and it'll be very similar analogy that I laid out in there. Kokomo Joe, they say, why is there not more of the super wealthy purchasing a ton of XRP? If I was Elon or Bezos, I would be buying as much as I could get. They seem to be going after Bitcoin. So they have some Bitcoin on their balance sheet for Tesla. I think they actually sold all of it at this point. So this is a paradigm shift that a lot of people are going to have on the other side of price appreciation. Wealthy people don't need to get wealthy again. Once you're wealthy, you protect your wealth. You are a steward. You're looking at wealth preservation and then growth. So for the wealthy, this is a speculative asset class. 62% of family offices aren't even looking at crypto. That's $16 trillion globally that family offices wield. So call it $10 trillion is sticking their nose up at this asset class. Another 3-4 million, they're like, maybe we would invest some, but it's got to be done a certain way. And then the rest of it, they're okay to roll a little bit, 1 to 5%, maybe even less than that in crypto. Because again, they're not looking for asymmetric bets. They're looking for uncorrelated bets. They're looking for ways to be able to hedge against other investments that they're making in order to be able to maintain their wealth through volatility and different market conditions. And I would say, institutional players, again, that might be managing those portfolios, they're not looking at this. Elon, I will say that I believe he holds a decent amount of XRP and that he will talk about it in the not too distant future. Bezos still owns like 13% of Amazon. He's doing fine. He don't need any XRP. He can borrow against his Amazon stock right now and buy a super yacht and pay no taxes. So that's like, I've heard this question before, and you're not the only one that's asked, by the way. So I just want to reiterate though, like, wealthy people aren't trying to get wealthier. They're trying to grow their wealth slowly, but preserve it over time. And they're not going to make, crazy bets on stuff that they're not completely sure on, or they don't understand how that hedges or works with the rest of their portfolio. Sherp the family says, I got the super chat. Thank you so much for the kind words and the donation. We got this person says, Jake, great meeting you last night. Thanks for being a good sport and sending the video to my girlfriend. Appreciate you too. Yeah. Well, again, don't be mad at me. I didn't do it on purpose, and we're all going to be okay. And I'm sure that 7% of the gains for having to listen to all this is going to be well worth it on the other side of it. Now she's asking for 8% advisory fee after seeing us together. Appreciate that, man. I enjoyed it, and yeah, happy to make the video with you to send back to the girlfriend. Thanks again for coming to the event. I had a really good time. We got Tim. He says 3 things. 1, best day of the week for the reverse carry trade to happen. Ooh, Sunday night into Monday morning would be my guess on the best time for it to happen. Most likely time for it to happen. And we already saw that in August of 2024. So that's why I'm saying that. Did you say that you're partners with Ripple Prime? I didn't say that, but Mike Higgins might have alluded to that in the interview that I did with him. So you can go back and watch that and see if that's what you think Mike said. And then 3, 20, 40, 60 billion XRP locked, can't even be sold by banks, institutions, etc. Not much left for you and me. Nope. There is not much left on exchanges out there. Ray says, doing the reverse carry trade, can we buy crypto on a cold wallet? Probably not. There are a few cold wallets where you can buy XRP. I think Trezor and Decent both have the capability for that. Enclave and Arculus both, because they're air gapped, you wouldn't have the capability for that. Ledger, I believe, does have an application to allow the purchase inside the wallet. If you're not using a broker or an OTC desk, I think it's going to be very difficult. Oh, Tangem also. Apparently you can. Tangem's great too. There's a lot of good cold wallets out there. Again, we like Decent. We've partnered with them. We think they have the best product. That's what I've used in the past. And so, you know, we make like $5 if you buy a wallet from them through our link. But there are a lot of other very good wallets out there. So I don't know that you're going to be able to access that liquidity during that moment in time. I would not be risking it personally. I would continue to dollar cost average before we get the volatility. Scrolling up through the super chats. Dang, WizFit, how many times did you put this in here? Thank you so much for the super chats. Oper, Opier, Opier. Sorry. They say, hey, bro, I seen an article that says Japan was going to hold off until June to raise rates, which I don't see how it's possible with the massive spike in old yen. You and me both. I don't understand why they didn't just, you know, we've got another monetary meeting in about an hour and a half. So we'll see what they end up doing. Hopefully we get a raise and we're off to the races. Marsha Bailey says, thank you. Thanks to you and Max for signing my book and taking pictures. Yeah, I had a good time. Thank you for really humbled that people even want my autograph in a book. Like, that's wild to me. I mean, we've written a couple books at this point, mostly Max, by the way, not even me. He allows me to co-author with him, which I very much appreciate. But thank you for taking the time out and bringing the book, and we're happy to sign. If anybody ever wants that done. She says, so glad you came to my neck of the woods. Steven's speech was great. He also signed my Canary Capital ETF book and picture, History in the Making. That's awesome. Very cool to see. Yeah, Steve's great. Really excited again to put that on with them in Mangrove last night. Canary Capital is doing some awesome work on the ETF's first ever XRP ETF that was launched. They were the first people to market with Bitcoin stuff. Just again, always trying to be first to market with things, and I think they're going to continue to do so. So, Small Guy 16 says, "Hey Jake, at what point will you concede defeat if the domino theory doesn't play out? P.S. Love what you do for the community. Thanks." If there's a lot of people that say the reverse carry trade has already played out, or it's far dampened in comparison to what it would have been. I disagree with that. I think people re-levered. I know how greedy people are. If we saw a rotation out of US treasuries into Japanese bonds and we didn't see huge liquidations from the rest of the market, or the implementation of XRP at that point to be able to provide liquidity, then yeah, I would concede, but I don't think I'm going to have to. Okay. Well, so that's what I thought. Japan's also going to hold here, which again, I don't know how they're going to do that. Seems they're going to have to move, and now it's got to be an emergency meeting. I don't see a way that they can continue to persist in the levels that they're at 159.6 on the yen versus the USD. They always defended around 160, so we'll have to see. Why would you not just go ahead and do it though? I don't know. Hummingbird says, "Why is the title of tonight's show Ripple Loves Thursdays?" Because they do. If you look at the court case, almost every time there was a good ruling or a ruling in general, it was always on a Thursday. So I don't know. Tomorrow's Thursday. We'll see what happens. This person says, "With the SEC announcement, does this mean other cryptos will be used alongside XRP when the reverse carry trade unwinds, therefore not causing a large spike in XRP?" No, it does not. There's still no clarity around those other tokens specifically. I mean, the majority are going to be listed as not securities and the capability to use them as commodities. But again, back-end settlement of the stock market requires XRP. I don't know how many times I have to say that for people to get it, but Corda's primary settlement mechanism, they built Project Ion with the DTCC. They finalized that in August of 2022. I am very confident that that's what they're going to use for back-end settlement of the stock market. And the only way that that's going to work is if XRP is a very, very high price. We got Reagan, the Viking. I say, "Not financial advice. Do you think XRP in?" He says Evergreen, but it's Evernorth. Will likely perform like MSTR and XRP has price appreciation, or is there a high execution risk? I'm looking for a way to boost returns. If you're looking for a leveraged play, that is a great leveraged play. Can't recommend, can't give you financial advice, but if you're looking for a leveraged play on XRP, XRPN is great for that. AWAGS16 says, "We're not even fully adopted domestically, so the idea that the Bank of Japan would rely on XRP or the XRPL for a bailout is a stretch. That requires global adoption we haven't seen. Please help me understand." I think you're going to see it in a certain jurisdiction before you see global adoption. I think they're going to force the rest of the world's hand there in Japan. If Japan were to move and their monetary system shifted, the rest of the world would have to follow, because a lot of the monetary structures that exist today are really kind of stood up on Japan's debt that they've issued. And if we didn't adopt that and they weren't able to be able to move things back through the FX market or have a liquidity buffer in that situation, it becomes a bad scenario. So I think the Bank of Japan will likely adopt XRP first, and then the rest of the world will follow suit. Yo Legend, he says, "I feel like I have another hole in one, but no one witnessed it. so it's not official. Well, that's really actually that's a really good analogy for how it is with XRP. Like, it's good, and you made it, but until other people see it, it's hard to understand. We got Goo colon. They say, hi, Jake. Do you have any thoughts about the DNA protocol, XDNA project? Thank you. Shout out to the mastermind and the T lady, and the mods. Well, let's give it a Google. I've never even heard of it before. So we got XDNA protocol. All right, I see it here. There's white papers, utility token, tokenomics. Where DNA meets blockchain, powered by the XRPL, owned by you. All right. So I guess you're tokenizing your own DNA on the XRPL. Interesting. I won't go down the rabbit hole of mRNA and the vaccines and all that. But this is cool. Like 23andMe, but private, which is awesome. So shout out. Yeah, it's cool. If you guys want to go check it out, again, I just Googled, XDNA project, and that's, you can go learn more about it there. We already did this one. I think I made it back up through the chat all the way. I'm going to grab, I guess we'll hang out for another 10 minutes here, and I'm going to grab a couple more super chats, then we'll wrap it. We got, I'm going to butcher the name, so I'm not going to try. Pronounced Loic BU. Okay, there you go. Loic BU. I don't think reverse carry trade is the only way XRP mass adoption unfolds. 10K plus price. Fortune favors the patient. Your thoughts? I don't know how else you're going to get a supply shock or drive enough demand at one time to push the price to get it going and kick off the positive flywheel on it. If you have another scenario that you've put together that you believe transpires in that situation, and again, I think Tether, is involved, illiquid exchanges, other illiquid situations, and they, have to use the ETF to push, a ton of liquidity into XRP in a very short period of time. Appreciate the super chat, and again, fair questions. Lots of stuff that I've thought about. 68J says it's April 29th, and you can get in and use the code DWP10. There you go. So again, if you guys want to go check out 68J's event there in Vegas, if you're going to be there for XRP Vegas, he would love to have you there. I'm going to try to make it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to this one. I've got some other obligations they're going to have to get back to Dallas for, but if you guys are going to be there, they would love to see you on April 29th, and you can use the code DWP10 to get 10% off of your ticket. We got J D God in NYC says, Jake, this is Prime Carvin 2. We thought you left the store to go grab milk, but you came back. Oh yeah, XRP to the moon. Very cool. I've not left the station yet, but you guys you'll see when I leave the station. Already did that one. I think I got through them all, which is unusual, but again, I told you guys to cut them off a little early. If you do need the LLC, we would love to work with you guys on that. Miss Cyberback, she's already got her LLC. She's structured. She worked with Digital Wealth Partners, or not Digital Wealth Partners, but Digital Family Office. You go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and you can use the code 50OFF50 OFFDAG LLC. That's 50 OFFDAG LLC. Gets you everything end to end for the LLC to manage your crypto, get anonymity, asset protection, all the fun stuff for just $2,000. Her question is, how does BlackRock benefit from not getting their ETF out yet? It's timed. I know it's frustrating waiting for the timing to be right, but I can tell you if it's not, it's going to be a flop. It's going to go up, and then we're not going to see the price levels needed to actually be able to facilitate it, and they've got to orchestrate it just right to really make it happen. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's got to be a perfect storm for me to be right on the prices that I talk about. So, again, take it with a grain of salt. There's a lot of people out there that have a lot of different opinions than me. I'm not the end all be all, but I will say, I have a very strong opinion that I'm going to be correct. And again, here's that code one more time for people that if you want to do the LLC, it's at that link. You can use the code 50OFF50OFF-DAG-LLC, get you everything for $2,000. We also have trust services. We have corporate veil. We have the template for the operating agreement. If you've already set up an LLC and you just need that piece, lots of different stuff there to be able to help people in whatever situation you find yourself in. If you want to work with Digital Wealth Partners, we have a deal going on right now for a limited time. If you have at least $100,000 in crypto, it doesn't have to be all XRP. Before it was 50,000 XRP. So you can have, call it 30,000 XRP and some other cryptos. There was a guy that said he had HBAR and ICP and some other stuff. We would love to work with you. You can get your access to institutional custody, get an advisor, get access to the yield. Well, not quite yet. The other products and solutions that we're bringing to market over there at Digital Wealth Partners. And so, yeah, if you just go to digitalwealthpartners.net. And then again, last but not least, we'd love to have you over there in the mastermind. If you want to come join us, go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2 there in the mastermind. And again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me and ask great questions. Really enjoyed the event there in Nashville last night. I appreciate everybody coming out for that. We will have one in Vegas on Wednesday night. If you're in the mastermind, you're going to know where it is. If you're not in the mastermind, you're not going to know. So with that, again, appreciate y'all taking the time out. Please like, subscribe, share. Hope y'all have a wonderful night, a wonderful week, and we will see you on the next one.